Did you know that you can now use Claude modules from Microsoft Foundry and access them from Python? So here we have a repo that shows you the steps to deploying Claude from Foundry and has code that works in Python, TypeScript, Go, Java, and C#. So if you want to try this out, first you go through these steps here to make sure you've got everything deployed and ready. I already did that, so you can see in my Foundry project, I do have a Claude Sonnet 4.5 model. This is the playground for it. And be like, who painted the Mona Lisa? Let's see how much it knows. So that will chat with the model, and we get back a response. Now, it does provide code here, and this code is using the Anthropic SDK with the API key from this project. And so this code does work, but that requires moving over to Anthropic SDK, right? Now, what I want to show is that we can actually use the OpenAI SDK with this model. So in this repo, we've got this code here that shows how you can use OpenAI SDK, right? So we import the OpenAI SDK, we import Azure Identity SDK, and here I'm using the Azure Developer CLI credential. You could also use Azure CLI credential, default Azure credential, whatever credential you're using. Now, you do need to use some credential. You can't actually use an API key currently with the responses API version of the Claude deployment. So you do need to use some sort of credential. So we bring in a credential, we get a token provider for that credential that's going to give an OAuth token, and we're using the scope of ai.azure.com. Then we construct the OpenAI client, pointing the base URL to our project URL, and then /OpenAI. So this will give us an OpenAI compatible endpoint for that project. Then we are passing our token provider callback as the API key variable. So it'll actually see that it is a callback function, and it will call it in order to get a token when it's sending requests and to make sure that token is refreshed. And then we do need to specify a API version query currently, just because of how new this is. Then we're using the responses method of the client, right? We are not using chat completion. So currently we're only supporting responses API, which is, it's a nice API. It works well with a lot of the new tool calling models. And that's what we're supporting with the Claude model. So we say client.responses create, we tell the model name, and this is the name of our deployment, and then we give our input. So let's try running that. Let's pop up back here in the terminal, and we can see here that it did run. I had some ones earlier here. So response for model, we got a tiny little story about a little unicorn. So there we go. So if you already have code that's using the OpenAI SDK with responses, in theory, you can swap that code out to point at a Claude model now and see if Claude models will work well for you for your use cases where you're currently using OpenAI models, right? It's just another option for you to try. Of course, you want to run evaluations and see what model truly works the best for your scenarios. All right, that's all. Bye, everyone.